Hello, Mr. Hutch. Can't hear you yet.
Rob, can you hear me?
Yeah, I hear you.
I'm on a Bluetooth headset, so the quality's not going to be great, but
Fair.
you can hear me. You can hear me, right?
Well enough, yes. So first question I have for you is, can you point to me any of your tweets or any of your videos that you've done talking about the claims from these family members?
I didn't talk about that.
You didn't talk about it?
No.
Okay, but you were heavily interested in talking about how Trump disrespected the soldiers, correct?
Yeah.
So would you say that a reasonable interpretation from the people listening to you then could be that you're full of shit and you don't actually care about disrespecting family members of fallen soldiers because you didn't even bother to talk about what these particular families themselves have talked about?
Sure. I mean, if you want to go with that, that's fine. But
so you acknowledge it. You acknowledge it.
I mean, if that's what you think, then that's fine.
No, it's not what I think. It's what I'm asking.
You asked me. Okay, go ahead.
I'm asking for your. You can't just say sure and then say if that's what you think. If that's not what I think, then please give me a defense. Give me a reason.
So I'm trying to understand your logic here.
Yes.
So you're saying that if I have not tweeted about these particular families, then I couldn't possibly care about like rules at Arlington. That's what you're saying, right?
I'm saying that your concern of the rules in Arlington are, you correct me if I'm wrong, that it is disrespectful to dead soldiers and their families, correct?
Yeah.
Okay, if you really cared about the thoughts and feelings of dead soldiers and their families, and these aren't random families that we're talking about. We're literally talking about the families and their statements of the event that you're criticizing and what they have said. If you really cared about disparaging family members of fallen soldiers, surely you would have breathed anything on this, and yet you haven't. Why?
Rob, so there were 4 soldiers that were ambushed and killed in Niger in 2017. There was one Gold Star family who spoke to their experience when Trump called them. He said that they said that he told her, well, your husband knew the risks before he got involved, and that he didn't even mention the soldier's name. Did you say anything about that when it happened?
No, I don't remember also going to X and complaining when I saw footage of Arlington when Barack Obama or Joe Biden were there. Biden himself using footage of him in Arlington for a campaign. I didn't stand and say, oh my God, how disrespectful, blah, blah, blah. You're the person making the affirmative claim, as is Kamala Harris's family, let me finish, as in this media and Kamala Harris's campaign, that are saying Trump's disrespectful of soldiers because of this event, and this event that he was invited to, the very fallen soldiers, they haven't given 2 shits, yourself included, as to what their feelings were. Not at all. So the idea that if you would just admit, yeah, you're right, I actually don't give a shit what these people say. I don't give a shit about falling soldiers. I only give a shit about using this as an attack against Donald Trump. Then we could move on to your line of questioning.
Rob, one of my best friends from high school, his name was Tim Shea. He was killed in Iraq in 2004, I believe. I do care about dead soldiers. It's a terrible thing when it happens.
Then why haven't you covered what these families have talked about?
Let's skip with this. Let's get to the particulars of why what Trump did was wrong. Can we do that?
No, we can't, because your ultimate conclusion of why what he did. I'll tell you why we can't. Because I'll tell you why we can't. Because you've already conceded.
I will concede. Concede whatever you want me to concede. Can we move on to the next thing?
No. Because this
you're
not conceding. You're not conceding. Okay, I just want you. You concede in this framework, and then we can move on. You say right now, I, Hutch, literally do not give a shit about fallen soldiers or about these families. I don't give a shit. I only care about this for partisan politics. No. Not if it helps. Not if it helps.
I fucked your promise.
You can say. I'm going to let you say your piece here for a couple minutes now, and then I'm going to tell you why we can't just move on. So you go ahead and filibuster and say your piece of what you want, and then I can tell you why that's bullshit. Go for it.
Okay. Are we at the point where I can talk about like why what Trump did was bad?
You can talk about what you want for 1 minute, and then I'm going to talk about why we can't move on and what you're saying is bullshit. You're on the clock. Go ahead. You got a minute.
Are you not going to address the substance of anything I say?
Are you going to let me explain why I'm not going to?
What are we doing here, Rob?
You called into my show because I was making the point that you don't give a shit about these families of fallen soldiers. Instead, you're politically grandstanding. And then you come on and sarcastically say, yeah, I'll concede whatever you want. You're right. I didn't talk about them. I'll concede for the sake of argument. Now let's talk about what I want to talk about.
You're assigning something that doesn't apply to me. I don't
That's
tweet
not true.
about a lot of things. I don't tweet about a lot of things, Rob. That doesn't mean that I don't care about anything that I don't tweet about. I've never tweeted about, I think, like starvation in Africa. Do you think that I don't care that people starve in the world?
It is not. What you're doing is what you're making.
This is an incredibly flawed way.
It is not incredibly.
Whether or not somebody cares about something.
It is not incredibly flawed because these families are the particular families in the particular incident that we're talking about that you're saying proves that Trump disparages the families of fallen soldiers. And when these people specifically say, actually, it's Kamala Harris, we wanted Trump there, and it's Kamala Harris that disparaged them. You haven't given a shit to even breathe one sentence on what these people have said. And I'll finish by saying this: when you said the reason that having this conversation about the rules matters is because ultimately these rules being broken by Trump proves that he doesn't care about the families of fallen soldiers, and you won't even talk about the families in this particular incident, not in some random incident that occurred in 2017 or some random incident that occurred elsewhere, but the specific incident that you're saying that proves that Trump doesn't care about fallen soldiers' family, and you won't even breathe a word. And then worse, you just sort of sarcastically go, yeah, I'll concede whatever you want me to, just so we can move to what I want to talk. You couldn't be more transparent that you don't give a shit. You don't give a shit. You don't give a shit. That's the point. You only care about using this as a weapon to attack Donald Trump, just like Kamala Harris, just like the mainstream media. You don't give a shit about these families. You don't care. You just want to weaponize going after Trump for breaking some sort of rules violation that you weren't even aware of 3 weeks ago.
Okay, so I want to ask you a question.
Sure.
Let's say there's a cemetery for fallen soldiers.
Okay.
And let's say there's a fallen soldier, and this person was diehard MAGA, diehard, right? Okay. Loved Trump, and was killed in Afghanistan or whatever. Would you be okay with Joe Biden taking a selfie with that person's headstone visible in the selfie for a campaign photo? Would you be okay with that?
Whether or not I would be okay is irrelevant to this specific situation, though I will answer it. Though I will answer it because it wouldn't prove me being okay with it wouldn't prove whether or not the other side or the families had grievances about why Joe Biden himself or why Donald Trump himself was a piece of shit and directly did things that were far more offensive to the family. Now, what would I have said if Joe Biden did something like that? Nothing. In fact, I've long since taken the stance that both sides oftentimes take terrible tragedies and then put those people up as sort of gold star families, or gold star I understand is just talking about military, but what do they call when the family of someone who's died of an illegal immigrant? Angel moms, is that the term they use?
Yeah. That's a lot of the Republican side.
I've said many times, like, listen, I understand the political importance of that, and I understand how powerful that message can be, but I also understand that a lot of it's emotional, and I don't usually weigh in on a lot of those things. What makes this case uniquely different is this. So I wouldn't have, if Biden had done that before, I'd have probably been more time talking about how he had dementia and it's being covered up by people like you and the mainstream media, how he was a disaster for the economy, how he was. I'm not pivoting. I'm telling you, you're acting like, oh, if Biden did something, if he posed in front of things at Arlington and used it for his campaign, you would have flipped out. I wouldn't have. In fact, isn't it true that Biden used photos of him at Arlington in a campaign ad in Memorial Day of 2020? Can you go back and find any video of mine or any tweet of mine criticizing that? Can you do that?
Rob,
you can? You can?
Agree. Wait, let me speak, for Christ's sakes. Everybody, listen, so many people in the left-wing space say that you're reasonable.
That's because they're smart.
Can we have a reasonable discussion without you, you keep interrupting me and pivoting to things that don't matter?
How does that not matter?
So the rule at Arlington Cemetery, especially in Section 60, which is a spot where recent deaths go, the rule is that they assign their own photographer to make sure that instances like what happened with Trump don't happen, where someone's headstone who didn't ask to be involved in any kind of political ad or photo or whatever, to make sure that those fallen soldiers are not against their will used in that kind of way. Do you understand why that rule exists? Would you agree that that's a good rule?
I would say that it's a rule that's equally as important as, aren't there rules that also say that you can't give political speeches in front of uniformed members? Isn't that true? There's a rule, I believe, that says that.
I don't know the particulars of that rule. Can we focus on this rule?
What I'm saying is that you can say, what I'm telling you is, I'm telling you in the past, it seems that things similar to that rule have been violated, and with campaign ads, which I didn't say a peep about, which shows that your hypothetical, if this happened, you would freak out, is untrue, because I didn't in 2020. Whether or not this rule, let me finish, I'm answering, whether or not this particular rule is something that'd be necessary, I don't know, I'd have to think. There could be particulars where I would think that maybe it wouldn't apply, maybe it should apply, whatever. I don't think necessarily it's a very important thing. I think the fact that we see that these families are talking about far more grievous, specific things that have been done by the opponents that are being ignored by not just the Kamala Harris campaign, but the media and you, shows that you don't actually give a shit about any of this.
I'm asking you without pivoting. Can you?
I'm not pivoting. I just did I include in there?
No, let me ask the question. Let me ask the question. Do you not agree that it would be a good rule, generally speaking, to make sure that you don't feature the headstone of some soldier who didn't ask to be a part of anything campaign related? Do you not agree that this would be a generally good rule to make sure that the grave sites of fallen soldiers are not disrespected?
Okay, I'll repeat the answer. You're incapable of hearing, so I'll repeat the answer. In general,
Can you do it without pivoting?
I could do it in the way that I feel like doing. In general, I would say I'm not going to listen to your demands as someone who transparently has already conceded that you don't give a shit about the fallen soldiers or about these particular families. You conceded, as you admitted.
Hutch conceded.
Hutch
That's a pretty foul thing to suggest.
Right, and you conceded it. You conceded it. That's what you said.
I did it for the purpose of
you conceded. Fine. You conceded. Fine. So you conceded. So Hutch has conceded. Yeah, a simple yes or no. I'll answer your question. I'll answer your question with a simple yes or no if you answer mine with a simple yes or no.
It's a
fair enough. Fair enough.
Don't accuse me of that. That's so.
You conceded. You conceded it, Hutch. You conceded it. Yes or no? Did you concede that?
You're playing games right now.
Yes or no? Did you concede that?
I have lost a best friend. He was one of my best friends.
That's not the question. A simple yes or no. Don't pivot. Don't pivot. Don't pivot. A simple yes or no. Why are you pivoting? You're pivoting. Why are you pivoting? A simple yes or no. Did you concede that you don't give a shit about these particular families?
Let me say it plainly.
Did you concede yes or no? Did you concede yes or no? Did you concede yes or no? I would like you to answer yes or no, and then you can expound. Did you concede? Hutch, did you concede? Why are you pivoting?
Rehabilitate your image.
Why are you pivoting?
Humiliating yourself. After humiliating yourself with the AI debacle.
More pivoting. More pivoting. A simple yes or no.
You accused me.
A simple yes or no. Did you concede? Did you concede? A simple yes or no. Did you concede that you didn't give a shit about these particular families of these fallen soldiers? Did you concede yes or no? Did you concede yes or no?
Do you think it was fairly obvious that I was doing so in a sarcastic way to advance the conversation?
So wait a minute. That's right. That's right. Now, does the audience see? Do you see? Do you see what happens? Do you see? Exactly as I said. So this is what Hutch did. So the entire point of me doing this topic tonight was that people like Hutch don't give a shit about these soldiers, these families. Kamala Harris doesn't give a shit. The media doesn't give a shit. And instead they just want to pivot to talk about the real of Arlington. So he comes on and says, sure, I'll concede. Let me finish. He comes on and says, sure, I'll concede so we can talk about what I want to talk about, which is what they always do. They have to control the narrative. They can't talk about things unless they're controlling what's stuff. So I'm like, no, we can't just move on because you're being sarcastic. You're not really conceding. You're like, yeah, I'll concede. Then when pressed on the fact that you concede, you literally do exactly what I said you would do, is say, it's clear that I was being sarcastic and I'm not spurting out. I'm breathing just fine. Hutch, don't talk to me like a fourth grader that you want to teach to masturbate.
Bro,
I know how to breathe. Can you tell everyone? Can you tell everyone again? Since we're pivoting, can you tell everyone again about how it gets you off to want to talk to fourth graders about masturbating? Can you tell us about that again?
Bro,
go ahead.
What is wrong with you, Rob?
Hutch, yes or no? Do you think we should teach fourth graders about masturbation? 10-year-olds.
I think it's fine to teach fourth graders about masturbation.
Thank you.
Rob.
Right, yes. Thank you. Okay, yes. So given that, you don't have to talk to me like those fourth graders. I know when to breathe. I'm doing just fine. Go ahead. So you conceded that you didn't give a shit about these families facetiously because you didn't want to talk about the families. You didn't want to talk about. So think about this. As soon as I finish with this point, when you had a chance to finally to address what these family members are saying, instead you said, "I'll just joke and say, sure, I concede, so I don't have to talk about what they said." Further proving your callousness and not giving a shit about the families of fallen soldiers, because you still, even here, when you had a chance to address it, said, "I don't want to talk about that. I just want to talk about the rules," which was exactly my criticism of you and people like Kamala Harris.
Okay. I would like to clarify my position when it comes to the families of fallen soldiers. I think that those people who lost loved ones in Afghanistan during that pullout were obviously devastated. And those are American citizens. They have every right to have political preferences. They had every right to invite Donald Trump to come and visit those gravestones. There's nothing wrong with that. I don't begrudge them for that. I feel terrible for their loss. I know what it's like to lose someone really close to you in war. It's horrible. It's a horrible kind of grief. I have no judgment of those families whatsoever. And if they want to denounce Kamala, if they want to blame Biden, if they want to prop up Trump, that's their right to do that. And I have no ill will towards those people. Do you accept that clarification?
No, I don't accept that clarification because you haven't directly responded. Are you voting for Kamala Harris?
Of course.
Okay, you haven't directly responded what they're saying about the disparagement that they received and the ill treatment that they've received specifically from Kamala Harris and Joe Biden and this administration. Of course, you're right on superficial level that when it comes to someone's son dying, you wouldn't disparage them or daughter. You wouldn't disparage them to blame the administration in charge. Of course, even if objectively they weren't at fault. I understand that. What we're talking about is something more. We're talking about not only are they blaming, which could be right or wrong, which is obviously right in this case because of the buffoonish way that the pullout occurred, but we're talking about the fact that they've since been treated like shit, in their own words, by both Biden and Harris. And this particular event where Trump showed up, that's being used by you, by the mainstream media, and by Kamala Harris's team to say, this incident itself proves that Trump doesn't give a shit about the families of fallen soldiers, while completely ignoring what the people that invited him there said about his opponents, shows that you really don't give a shit about fallen soldiers. You only care about it insofar as it helps advance your political narrative. You don't give a shit about what they said about Kamala Harris or addressing it. You're talking superficially. Of course, any family can say what they want about any candidate, but you haven't addressed the fact that they're saying Kamala Harris is using this as a campaign issue, saying that she cares about fallen soldiers when that's a blatant lie. She has not even reached out to these people, not once, hasn't even said their names, and has called it a success.
Rob, I not only not disparage these families, I empathize with that kind of grief. I understand that kind of grief. So when I'm telling you this, it's not superficial. I'm not lying to you. I'm not bullshitting. The pain that they must have experienced, I'm sure, was terrible.
That's a pivot to what I just said. I just explained.
You accuse me of not caring about these people's pain.
That is not. I just explained to you. I just said, of course, when we're talking superficially about people's heartbreak of their sons dying or their daughters dying, and they might tend to blame. But what I said is unique about this, and it's different, and what you're not responding to is the treatment that they're claiming that they've received afterwards. Yes, we could say that. Are you telling me right now that if this would have been the opposite way, that had this been Kamala Harris showing up here and Trump, these people had died, the 7th year anniversary of people that died under Trump's watch, and they invite Kamala, she shows up, and they're very happy that she's there, and Trump's team makes a big story out of, but she took pictures at Arlington. One, you're telling me you would have said, absolutely, that's terrible, Kamala, and second, you would have said, I don't give a shit what the people say, I don't give a shit that the people are saying that Trump's garbage, blah, blah, blah. They have the right to say what they want. Of course not. You would be making it a huge issue and saying, how dare Trump try to stand on the graves of these fallen soldiers whose families he was refusing to even contact. How dare he?
It's not about the simple fact that they took a photograph. You can take photographs at Arlington. The reason why Arlington insists on them using their own Department of Defense approved photographers is to make sure that the shots are framed in a way that doesn't involve some other dead soldier. So, for example, I told you, my friend that got killed, he was a die-hard Democrat. He came up with this fake group called the Democratic Bruise Crew. It was this whole thing. and he went off to fight in Iraq, and he got killed in a roadside bomb. I can tell you with 100% certainty, if his headstone was ever featured in a Trump TikTok, he would have been pissed. That is why these rules exist.
That's fine. Notice how that is a complete...
Listen. And hold on, let me just say just one more thing, Rob. You presented the hypothetical if Kamala came and took photos and that sort of thing. If this hypothetical happened, right? If Kamala took photos and she featured the headstone of a diehard MAGA soldier that died, and then that person's family said how this is wrong.
But that's not that's not an analogous situation. That's not happening right now. You're pivoting off the analogy. You're pivoting off the analogy to make another analogy because you're refusing to answer my hypothetical.
Wait, no, I'm trying to. I'm laying out the exact same situation.
No, you're not. I asked you a hypothetical instead of answering. You're like, well, what about this hypothetical?
Wait. Let's just make it exactly 1-to-1. If the families of multiple service members invited Kamala to come to Arlington and do a ceremony of remembrance for the fallen soldiers, and she showed up and she insisted on her own staff taking these photos, and in one of those photos there was a headstone of a MAGA person, and that person's family got upset. You're telling me right now you wouldn't empathize with that?
No, I'd empathize with them. Can you show me the anti-MAGA person whose headstone was featured?
What?
You're saying in your direct hypothetical that if there was a headstone featured of a Kamala that was of Kamala's photo op that was a MAGA person, could I sympathize with that MAGA person's family? So that would imply, if this is a direct analogy, that right now you're saying there was an anti-MAGA person whose headstone was featured in the pictures that Trump used.
Oh, I understand the confusion. So I'm 100% sure that this person is MAGA, but there was the family. Are you just unaware? There was a family member of someone whose headstone was featured in a Trump TikTok, and that family member has made a public statement saying that they're disappointed that their loved one was included in a Trump ad. Now, I don't know if they're anti-MAGA. They could be apolitical. They could be a Republican.
But there is, I'm unaware. You are saying there is a person that's came out and said that headstone right there was my son's, my daughter's. I don't want it used in a political ad. That's what you're saying.
Yeah.
Okay, that's what I'm asking you. Yeah, I sympathize with that person, absolutely. Do I think that it's a huge deal? No. I think that a far bigger deal. I'll finish. I answered. Notice how I answered. Notice how I directly answer your hypotheticals, and then you insist that you then get to retell. No, I answered your hypothetical. Now I'll expound. By the way, I have to leave at 10 p.m. because I have a prior engagement. So, I would sympathize with that family, absolutely. I think that that's a far less grievous deal, and things like that occur many times anyways. For example, that could occur in a cemetery. It could have occurred in the Biden thing. Right? It could be the fact that you're making it sound like, well, when Biden did these campaign ads, we don't know if it was directly in the section of Arlington where someone that recently died had been buried. So what? What if it's my great-grandfather who is a vehement Republican that would be furious that the headstone that was shown in the Arlington Cemetery under Biden was his great-grandfather's who would have hated Biden? Does that make it any less egregious? Does that mean that you would say, oh, you don't sympathize with that family? And secondly, that's still far less of a grievous situation than what these family members directly are talking about, which, again, you have over and over pivoted. You have just said, of course, their family members died. I sympathize with that. Maybe they blame Biden. But what you haven't talked about is them saying the treatment they're receiving from Kamala Harris and Joe Biden is abysmal. And the fact that Kamala Harris is out there saying, I respect the families of fallen soldiers is a lie because she has treated them like shit and has ignored them. And you ignored it not only in the fact that you haven't talked about it yet, even though you're hyper-focused on this specific situation and doing videos and tweeting about it, but because you came in here and callously came in here and deflected by saying, sure, I'll concede I don't give a shit about them, to avoid everything you could of talking about what these, let me finish, I'll give you the last word, to avoid everything you could of talking about these people said. You don't give a shit. You continue again to deflect. You haven't even once remotely tried to respond to the fact that we're not just talking about, yes, you're sympathetic that their sons died and maybe they blame Harris and Biden. You haven't responded to the fact that if we're going to talk about who's disparaging fallen soldiers, that these particular families say the treatment they've received is shit. And you callously tried to lie and say, sure, I concede, to avoid talking about it because you don't give a fuck. You only care about fallen soldiers insofar as it could benefit you going after political opposition that you don't care about. I'll give you the final word and then I have to leave. Has to be like 2 minutes though, because I got an engagement at 10.
Rob, I think it's rich that you're accusing me of not caring about the wishes and feelings of fallen soldiers when you just told me a moment ago that the family who spoke up and said that they didn't appreciate their son's headstone being featured in a Trump ad. You said, it's not that big of a deal. That is you literally saying, I don't give a fuck about the feeling of that person who spoke up. You are massively projecting right now.
It's not. How is that? How is me saying I absolutely
projecting?
How is that me saying I absolutely sympathize with that family member that's upset about that, which I honestly do? How is that me disparaging that family when I'm admitting absolutely?
You don't think it's a big deal.
I said I don't think it's as big of a. Well, one, it's not that big of a deal, and second, it's nowhere near as big of a deal as specifically it's having these. It's not.
Right. That is
it's not. It is not
saying that you don't care about their feelings, or that
no,
their feelings don't.
That is not me saying that I don't care about their feelings. Me saying that I would understand it.
On this particular thing.
That's bullshit. That's bullshit.
I appreciate their dead son.
I sympathize. Absolutely. I think that absolutely. I think that that's terrible. I do. I don't think it's near as big of a deal as someone.
Agree.
No, I'll tell you. No, I'll tell you what I agree. No, I'll tell you what I agree. Go ahead.
Rob. So if you agree that family had a right to be upset, then you agree that those rules are in place for a good reason.
I agree that
avoid this thing happening.
I'll go back to what I said which you refused to listen to, that yes, I absolutely think I could see a reason for those rules. I could see times that they wouldn't really apply. I don't think it's as near a big of deal as having a photo that could have something that you as a family member would say, hey, I don't really like that photo. That is on a completely different level than having a disastrous policy. Let me finish. Then having a disastrous policy that leads to the death of soldiers, then refusing to show up to events about those soldiers, refusing to say their names, refusing to ever call them, and then putting campaign ads talking about this specific event with these families of these fallen soldiers, saying that you care about the families of fallen soldiers and your opponent don't. I think that is easily exponentially 10 times worse than what Donald Trump's accused of doing. And the fact that you and Kamala Harris refuse to talk about it and in fact want to come on and make jokes and be sarcastic. Yeah, I'll concede that I feel their pain, whatever.
Because you're accusing
further shows exactly what my criticism, you have proven exactly what my criticism of you is, that you don't give a shit what these people said, that you just want to control the narrative to use this as a political point. That's it. That's what you exhibited in this fucking con.
Rob.
All right, it's 10 o'clock, man. Go ahead. You got the last word. I got to go, though.
There's still a minute left. It's not 6:59.
That's what I just said. I got to go here, so go. I said you got the last word.
You just said a moment ago that you don't think it's a big deal. No, hold on. You acknowledged that those rules being in place make sense to make sure that families like the one who are upset about what happened don't experience that kind of pain. So you are tacitly acknowledging that Trump should not have violated those rules.
Do you think those rules should exist for all of Arlington or just this particular section?
You can look at the ruls. The rules.
I just asked you a question. What does that? I said, should that rule exist for that section or all of Arlington?
It's literally, Rob, you can look up the rules. There's an Axios article. I'll send it to you.
I don't give a shit. Listen, real quick. I don't give a shit what the rules are.
I'm saying, know what the rules are?
No, I don't give a shit right now. What I give a shit right now is,
what?
Do you think?
Why
because listen to me. Because we're talking me and you and what we think morally should be the case and what these rules should be, right? That's what we're talking about. So I'm asking you, do you think these rules should apply to all of Arlington or just this one section?
I don't know how. I'm not familiar with Arlington. I don't know how I would do the rules.
Okay,
to make sure.
Let me be real quick. Let me because you are incapable of answering this question honestly. Let me try to dumb it down for you in a way that you can't. Do you think? I don't know why. Okay, so I already asked you the hypothetical that you had answered before. So if my great grandfather is buried in a section of Arlington that was used in Joe Biden's 2020 campaign ad, and that would have pissed him off, are you equally outraged and think that Joe Biden should have violated rules?
Instead of dealing with hypotheticals, find me a person.
What are you talking about? What are you talking about? Why does it matter why does it matter? Why does it matter if I could find a person? Your point is the rules should exist because hypothetically that person could exist.
Example.
Oh, so
real example of somebody who's getting upset about this.
So just to be clear,
giving me a hypothetical.
Just to be clear,
just
to be clear, if it would turn out the person that said that's my family member in that gravestone there, and he would be upset if they were wrong. If that wasn't their gravestone, then you would say, "Oh, Trump did nothing wrong." Correct?
Wait, no, you're not. Wait, what are you saying right now, Rob? It is that person's headstone.
Holy fuck! What if they were wrong? What if it was wrong?
It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter because you already
right.
That's right. The rule exists for a good reason.
Right. There's the point. And I said, oh, so then you would admit that good reason would exist even if it was other sections of Arlington. And then you pivot back.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Because what you did previously was you pivoted back and said, well, show me a person that was pissed off. Okay, then I look forward to your post criticizing Joe Biden's 2020 campaign ad on Memorial Day where he was showing video of him in Arlington. Because those rules should exist because any of those gravestones featured there could have been family members of people that don't appreciate Joe Biden. And you think that's equally egregious to what Trump did, correct?
I don't know what kind of rules they have in place for the different.
What does it matter what the rules are? You're saying that's what the rules should be, right?
The Arlington staff, they have their own photographers, and those photographers took that video of Biden on that day in Arlington. They assigned their own photographers to make sure that anybody who comes in there is in compliance with these rules to avoid situations like the one that happened with Trump.
Wait a minute. So if an Arlington photograph would have occurred there with Trump, and it would have included same picture, same gravestones included, but it was an official Arlington person, would you not have empathized with that family member that said, I'm pissed?
The Arlington staff would have framed the photo to make sure that the other headstone wasn't in the video, Rob.
Bullshit.
The point you're missing.
Bullshit.
Rob,
I can prove it.
Look it up. You have no.
Okay, well then I just want to be clear. Your argument then is in the 2020 campaign ad of Joe Biden where we see a bunch of gravestones that the Arlington
DOD staff.
Okay, that DOD staff contacted the family of every single person that's gravestone was shown to make sure they were okay with it. That's your argument?
You're asking me to comment about something. I'm not familiar with that section of the cemetery.
But why does it matter? Why does it matter?
Somebody comes in to take a photo or video, it's DOD staff that does.
Why does your argument is horseshit because it doesn't matter if you know what that particular. It doesn't matter. And you already agreed if that rule was there for good reason that just because it's a DOD staff that's taking the picture, the good reason would be you don't want someone's gravestone in there that doesn't agree with the political message. It doesn't matter if it's a Trump staffer or a DOD staffer taking it. And the idea you're saying, if it was a DOD staff, they would make sure that there's no gravestones of anyone that might not be down with that political message is horseshit.
Yeah.
That's bullshit.
No, it's not.
Okay, so we'll leave you go on this. So if there is a video, you don't have to agree, but if there is a video that was used in a campaign ad of Joe Biden around headstones in Arlington, your argument is, what you're telling me right now is that you know that the Arlington staff specifically contacted each family member of everyone whose gravestone was seen to make sure that they agreed with the political message of Joe Biden.
I haven't seen this ad that you're talking about. But I'm positive that if I were to find this ad, I'll bet you anything. None of the headstones have visible names.
So what's it matter? You could know that that's your family's headstone?
Because, what do you mean that doesn't matter? What do you mean that doesn't matter?
If you can't see the name of the headstone, but based on the headstone location, everything, that's your family member, you don't have the right to be upset?
It's not the same thing.
So you don't give a shit. You don't give a shit. Does that family have the right to be upset? Yes or no?
No, Rob, I'm the one that actually.
That's what I thought. You can't answer. You don't give a shit. You don't give a shit about the rules. You're only using this for political expediency, and you came in here proving that by playing a game and saying you actually conceded that you didn't give a shit about these Gold Star families, and then you admitted that you did it as a game just because you didn't want to talk about what they had to say. Take it easy, Hutch. We'll see you. We'll see you, sir. There you have it now.